morning, good morning, good morning. I'm sorry I'm a couple of minutes late. Had a few technical issues with my iPad, so fingers crossed it's going to be good and play ball for this live. So welcome to session 4, all about living things and their habitats. We've looked at lots of different things already. Last week we were looking at microorganisms. I've loved seeing some results of your microorganisms that you've been growing on bread. Today we're going to move on and think about, right, well, we've got all of these living things. What are the characteristics of a good habitat? So we're going to think about what a habitat is and what are the bits or the things needed for a good habitat. And the first thing that we're going to think about is something that we remembered all the way back in session 1. So in session 1, we talked about the fact that all living things, be it a blue whale, a human, a tiny ant, a tree, they all have the same life processes. And there are 7 of them. And in order to remember them, you use the Mrs. Gren acrostic, where you've got Mrs. Gren going down the side. So it was all the way back, it was a month ago, but can anybody remember the 7 life processes that all living things share? So that's our very first activity, because that is really key to understanding about a good habitat, because a good habitat will support all 7 of these life processes. So that's our first one. How many of these can you remember? I can see lots of you joining in the chat. I can see Grace and Rose and Willow and Caden and Myla and Eleanor and Jaden and Rose and Jack and Lucas and Thomas and Natasha, Peter and Lucy, Piper, June, Clem, B, Connie, Georgia, Maya, Ronnie, Edie, lots and lots and lots of people. So we have got lots of answers coming in. So we've got growth, nutrition, movement, respiration, sensitivity. Lots of people saying movement. Hi, Declan, Emmy and Freddie. Respiration, reproduction, excretion from Jack. Amazing, lots of good memories. My dog is taking advantage of the fact that I'm live to now dig through my clean washing. Come here and stop being naughty. Lots of various things. Amazing. Growth, respiration, energy. Right, let's go through them. So the M was for movement. So my dog likes to do lots of movement, don't you? Which includes digging through clean washing when she thinks the guy can't tell her off. We've got respiration. So my dog is definitely involved in respiration. Are you breathing? Are you sure? We've got sensitivity. So my dog's definitely going to be sensitive. Well, you're doing a lot of yawning. But for example, sensitivity, you can see Lex, she's sensitive to you trying to touch her whiskers, which is how a dog often feels things. So she's putting her feet up. We've got growth, although you're not growing anymore, are you? Don't you be naughty. No. So we've got growth. Reproduction, so having babies. Excretion, you definitely do lots of that, don't you? You're getting grumpy with me, I can see. So you do lots of poos and wees, don't you? So you do lots of excretion. And nutrition, which means you get lots of nutrition. You eat a lot, don't you? You eat too much. Do you? Yes, you do. So all living things. It is the Time Explorers logo. Well spotted. So I'll change it right now. I did put it on. See, I told you I'm having technical issues here today. Let's put it up. World learners. There we go. So those are the things. It doesn't matter if you're a pug. It doesn't matter if you're an ant. It doesn't matter if you're a weed. It doesn't matter if you're a blue whale. All of them need these 7 life processes. And we remember it by thinking about Mrs. Gren. Now, we have all of these 7 processes, but in order to stay An octopus, absolutely. In order to stay alive and healthy, you need the perfect conditions to carry out these 7 life processes. So you need to do all of those 7 life processes in order to survive as a living thing, but you need the basic things in your environment, in your habitat, in order to stay alive and healthy. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. What conditions do we need to stay alive and healthy to carry out those 7 life processes? So that's what I'd like you to think about. But we're not going to think about ants, and we're not going to think about leaves. We're going to, or trees rather, we're going to think about you. What are your basic needs? And when I say basic needs, I mean, you know, playing an Xbox isn't a basic need. It's a need that you might have for your entertainment, but it's not a basic need. You're going to say goodbye. Right. So they all wanted to know what your name is. I don't think I really did this live for you. This is Peg. So say goodbye, Peg, and you can sit behind me. So what do we need in order? So some of you are saying we definitely need food. We definitely need, not necessarily a house, but yes, shelter. Absolutely. So we need access to food, access to water, access to shelter. Yeah, she is cute, but she's naughty. As I said, she was digging through the clean washing I've just put on the chair over there because she knows I can't get her because she knows I'm live. She's not silly. Are you? You're cute, but naughty. So, yes, obviously saying nutrient, oxygen, access to exercise, maybe, access to clothes. Now, let's think. Do trees need access to clothes? Possibly not. Access to shelter. Is entertainment a basic need? This is really, really interesting. So, basic needs are food and water, space to grow and sort of have young, oxygen, and shelter and safety. So those are our basic needs. Now we have lots of other needs. As I said, you might have a need to have your favourite pillow to go to bed. You might have a need to watch your favourite TV programme on a Saturday evening. You might have a need to have certain toys that you enjoy playing with, or games consoles that you enjoy playing with, but they're not your basic needs. You would still survive if you didn't have those things. Your life might not be as enriched, but you would still survive, because all we need is food and water, space to move, to grow, to have young, oxygen to breathe, and shelter and safety. Now, the thing to say is that those basic needs might seem really obvious, and you might be saying, well, obviously, we all have those basic needs, but we don't. And although we're not going to concentrate, some humans don't have those basic needs around the world for various reasons, but also lots of other living things do not have those basic needs. So in order for your basic needs to be met, you need to have a good habitat. And when we talk about habitats, we're talking about places in order to live and to grow and to have young and to get our food and water from and to get our oxygen and for us to stay safe and sheltered. So a habitat is a place where animals and plants live, where they can find everything that they need to stay alive. So my first question is, this is a picture of the ocean. Do you think the ocean is a habitat? So you can give me a thumbs up, you can give me a thumbs down. Do you think the ocean is a habitat? What do you think? Yes, a nest, a burrow, yeah, it could be a home. So that's what I'm saying, is the ocean a habitat? Yes, the ocean is a habitat for whales, somebody says. June says it's definitely, so lots of you say it is a habitat for fish. Jack saying yes, June saying yes. Okay, so we're all pretty agreed with that one. What about this? Is a forest a habitat? Is a forest a habitat? What do we think? Is a forest a habitat? For birds that fly, yes. For squirrels, for foxes. So we're all sort of thinking that animals that live in trees. George is saying definitely a forest is a habitat. What about then a leaf? Is one leaf on a plant, is that a habitat? What do we think? Is a leaf just one single leaf? A hedgehog can't live on a leaf. A badger can't live on a leaf. A pigeon, that's not going to be a habitat for a pigeon. But is one single leaf on this plant a habitat? Oh, we've got a bit of disagreement because someone's saying yes, because bugs can live on them. Insects, microorganisms, which we did last week, could live on that leaf. Caterpillars could live on the leaf. Larva from a ladybird, it would have everything it needs on that leaf. Absolutely. So I think a leaf is a habitat for microorganisms and for one of my favourite things are, which is a really random one, I really like green fly. Have you ever seen little green fly? They're not very good for gardeners because they chew up plants. But I love green fly. They're so sweet. They just look really sweet. So yeah, leaf definitely is. Right. What about the gnarly root of a tree? Is that a habitat? So a root of a tree. What do we think? Is that a habitat? Yeah, woodlice would find that a lovely habitat. You can see actually plants and animals. What's actually growing on this root, which proves it's a habitat? It's actually got a sort of a type of plant that's growing on it. It's moss. Yeah, you can actually see a living organism using it as a habitat because you can see moss. Earwigs, says Georgia. I don't like earwigs, but yes, absolutely. So yeah. What about this sort of cold, hard-looking rock, or it might be quite a warm rock because it does look a bit deserty here. But is a rock? Is that a habitat? Is a rock a habitat? Because a rock's not living. Is a rock a habitat? Someone says I've frozen. Can everybody? Am I all right for everybody else? So is a rock? Yeah, more bugs. If you often lift up a rock, I try and put my children off doing it because it is interfering with the habitat. But yeah, insects, microbes, maybe snakes could use it for shelter. Lizards, scorpions. Thank you, June, for letting me know I'm okay. Moss, lichen. So if you remember Samantha that used to work on our team and make videos, she absolutely loved lichen. Yeah, lots. Yeah, I think it really is. It really is plants could grow on it. In fact, if you look, you can definitely see some sort of lichen or something like that. Okay, what about a pond? So my next question is a pond a habitat? Is a pond a habitat? Is a pond a habitat? Definitely. So we went last week to a home ed thing where we did pond dipping. Pond is absolutely full of life. We had like this little card and we had to swish the net and then empty it into a little like tray of water, and we had to like look at what was in a pond, and I was absolutely blown away with how much life was in this pond. You looked at the pond and it didn't look like there was anything there, but there were little nymphs and there were these funny, I think they were called kamikaze bugs. They literally just like spun round like this. And there were little like water fleas, and there was loads of stuff. And my eldest had found a casing for a particular nymph that then come out for a dragonfly. So yeah, absolutely, water snails, fish, this water lily, the pond is its habitat. Right, what about the blade of grass? Is that a habitat? Can one blade of grass be, or pond skates as well, can one blade of grass be a habitat? What do you think? Surely not one blade of grass. What do you think? June says yes. What could have a habitat of just a blade of grass? Surely there's nothing there that would be just a blade of grass. Some of you saying no. Definitely not. Some of you are saying, well, aphids, which are like these little like green fly things. Yeah, lots. So some of you are saying no, and some of you are saying yes. But definitely microbes. Another one that someone's mentioned is fungi. So there could be fungi spores on a piece of grass. I would argue, and this is a bit gross, but if my dog did a poo on the grass, there's probably some sort of microbes that are in their poo that probably then sort of make their way onto the grass. I don't know. Something maybe I should look into. So I would say that basically animal habitats are everywhere. Now let's have a quick match up. We've got a frog, a polar bear, and a bird. So matching up their habitats, you would say they're very different habitats and what they need is very different. So a frog's habitat is often by the side of a pond. A polar bear lives in very cold Arctic conditions. And a magpie, you might see lots and lots of magpies around, but you might not. We always salute our magpies around here, me and my children, and say good morning, Mr. Magpie, how's your wife and children? Quite why we think that all the magpies are boys, I don't know, because they're probably not. Well, they're definitely not, but tell me, does anyone else salute a magpie? Because we do, because of superstition. But they have very different, looking at the pictures, they have very different habitats. So I want you to work out, I'm going to give you 1 minute you can grab a piece of paper and a pencil. You can drop it in the chat. You can have a chat with your grown-up. They need very different things. So if a frog is living in a pond, what would its perfect habitat be? And a way to think about where would its perfect habitat not be? So what would make that area it's living, that pond, not be the ideal habitat? The same with the polar bear. So think about what its perfect habitat would be and why, by thinking about what a dreadful habitat would be and why. And the same with a magpie. What does a magpie need? So I'm going to give you 1 minute to jot your ideas down, and then we're going to talk about it. Are you ready? Off you go. You shouldn't hear me at the minute, Mima, because I'm being quiet, because I'm not quiet very often and I want you to concentrate. Jaden, when we're thinking about the environment that the polar bear needs to live in, so what would the perfect environment be for the polar bear? Right, so some of you are getting a little bit sort of confused. So lots of you are saying about they might need, thinking about their actual needs, their physical needs, but we're thinking about their habitat. So let's think about frogs. So frogs definitely need a habitat where there's lots and lots of food. So they need food such as flies and cockroaches, spiders. They have a long sticky tongue. And they have bigger frogs that can eat bigger animals like mice and birds. So they definitely need food. So lots of you have caught the idea that frogs would need bugs to eat. Well done to whoever's behind Kate's comment. They would need camouflage because they can't be in an area. So if, for example, it wasn't an area with reeds and other different things that they could camouflage themselves from, because they don't want to be eaten themselves. So it's not going to be a successful habitat if they are all going to be eaten by predators and otters and birds and fish and so on. Obviously, they're going to need water, and lots of you have picked out they need clean water, unpolluted water for drinking. But some of you have also started to think about the fact that they would need water for laying their eggs in. So really well done if you worked that one out. And so therefore, what would the habitat, if the habitat wasn't a good habitat? Well, if the habitat had all the plants removed, for example, and they couldn't camouflage, or if the water was polluted and they couldn't lay their eggs successfully in it, or if, for example, people let out other animals. So there's the American, is it an American bullfrog that accidentally has got out into our waters and is sort of eating lots of the prey that our native species would have eaten, which is causing a huge problem. We have a very similar problem in our waterways around here because our waterways are full of American crayfish, and American crayfish eat the native crayfish. So that's what frogs would need. Let's think about polar bears. So polar bears obviously would need lots of access to food. They eat seals and reindeer and fish and things like that. And again, thinking about a poor habitat, some of you are talking about that they need fur to keep warm, but they do need white fur for camouflage so that they can blend in with the snow. But the biggest thing they definitely need is sea ice. They need sea ice to hunt, to live on and to breed on. They cannot effectively catch things like reindeer if they don't have big polar ice caps to live on. And so when again we think about maybe the habitat that's not ideal, a habitat that's not ideal is areas where those polar ice caps are melting, because it's affecting their ability to catch food and to camouflage. And there have been cases where polar bears are making their way down south into areas where they haven't usually lived in because their habitat that they were living in isn't suitable anymore, which is why there is now a thing called a Pizzly bear, which you can go and look up after this lesson, which is where polar bears and grizzly bears have got together and had babies, because a lot of polar bears are now tracking down south because the habitats, because of melting ice caps, their habitats are not good enough for them to support those 7 life processes. Now, lots of you have got a good one for the magpies. They need food such as berries and worms and small insects. They need camouflage as well, so they're less visible to predators. And they need materials for nest building, such as twigs and leaves and things like that. So again, need very similar things. They all, even though there's a massive polar bear and a tiny frog, they all need similar things. And so the difference is with humans is that we are very unique, and we are unique because we can make big changes to our habitats so that we have everything we need and more, because we actually have built roads and vehicles so we can travel around and get places quickly. We get our fresh water into our homes for drinking, cooking and washing. Bear with me, my other dog is now eating a slipper. Hang on. No, you're not eating that. Goodness gracious me, what is it with these animals and their habitats? No, you're not having it. We grow our prey now. So we grow, if we're meat eaters, we grow our food for animals, for meat and dairy products. If we're vegan or vegetarian, we grow plants for us. So we don't have to go and hunt for our food. We kind of grow it for us. And we have super houses that provide us with heating. They protect us from cold weather. They provide the right air conditions. So if we're hot, we have air conditioning. If we're cold, we have heating. So we've almost taken the perfect habitat for humans, like even further than normal animals. And that can lead to an awful lot of problems. I do have 2 pets. I have another. Do you want to see the other pets? She's probably less excited about being on camera. This is the other one, which has now got, we've got a snotty nose. It's not very nice. So this is the second doggy. I don't know why you both are in the limelight today. So this is my other doggy. And their habitat clearly needs to have slippers to chew. This is a very chewy dog. So the problem is because we've made our habitats almost so perfect with our gardens and our big houses and our and all of these things, we're actually threatening the habitats of other animals. So what dangers to living things can you see in these pictures? And can you think of any more? Well, if you think about those microorganisms and those insects that might be living in the grass, going and mowing your lawn, for example, isn't really a very good idea. If you think about all our roads, so sometimes when you travel around the roads, you see lots of dead animals on the side. We see lots and lots and lots, sadly, of dead deer near to us. We move and destroy habitats, growing and building our houses, and we often drop lots and lots of litter. And so this is where the perfect habitat becomes a little bit difficult, because whilst we are pursuing our perfect habitat, we are threatening the habitat of other animals. So these are some of the threats to animals. So, for example, eating litter, which could poison or injure them. Litter can cause, animals to cut themselves or get tangled or trapped in rubbish. A big thing that's coming out at the moment is the fact that lots of chemicals and pollution is polluting a lot of our riverways. I know if you follow Steve Backshall, he's doing a lot about the water quality in the Thames at the moment. There's lots of pollution in our waterways, which obviously is affecting fish and insects and other plants. Fire. So in other countries where we've got wildfires, they can kill lots of animals and plants. And so, as I said, if we cut down tall grasses, we really like in this country, having mowed grass. But actually, they're really important. Long grass and flowers are important for habitats of even really small things. Roads are really dangerous for animals. Cutting down trees and building new homes is destroying habitats. And also walls and fences. So they recommend if you've got hedgehogs, you should have a little hedgehog hole in your fence so that the hedgehogs can go from garden to garden to garden if you have a garden. So what I would like to say is pick out of these 8, we're going to have a vote of what do you think the biggest threat to habitats are for animals and why. I didn't know about the Seine in Paris. Apparently it's exactly the same in Paris. Politicians refuse to swim in it, but won't address the pollution. Yeah, we have a real problem at the moment with, it's similar as well to what we're talking about, nationalisation and privatisation yesterday, with regards to a lot of people are saying there's just not enough regulations on companies to put their things away. So Jaden's going for chemicals in our waterways. Whoever's behind Anna is talking about wildfires. Can I please zoom into it? I'll turn my camera off and then I can zoom into it. Chemicals harm the wildlife and harm us. Yeah, that's a good one. And so I'm loving the fact that you're giving me reasons for your opinion. We've worked lots on this at the moment. So great that you're using reasons for your opinion. Georgia says littering. So why do you think littering is the worst? June says she can't pick. They're all really bad. It's something to consider. And I think this is a really tricky one because as we push for our perfect habitat, we threaten the perfect habitats of other animals. And it's a really difficult thing. It's not easy. It's not easy because our population is growing. We need more houses, we want more stuff, and we're using more energy. Yeah, it's at the detriment of other animals. It's not an easy answer. It's not an easy thing to come to an answer with. So the big one for me also, which I just wanted to introduce you to because it's something that I find quite interesting, is also the problem with invasive species. So invasive species are species of animals that live in this country that shouldn't be here. And the squirrel is an example of, the grey squirrel is an example of an invasive species. So grey squirrels aren't supposed to be here. They're actually native to America. They were introduced into the UK in the 1870s because people thought that it would just be a nice thing. Like, let's introduce this animal and it'll be really lovely to see them in parks and gardens. And it is really, really lovely to see them in parks and gardens. However, we had our own native squirrel. Our native squirrel was a red squirrel. And so the grey squirrels were bigger, they were stronger, they breed more quickly. They were eating all the food of our red squirrels. And now our red squirrels are only in a really small amount of places and they're in danger of extinction. And so I've never ever seen a red squirrel. And there's lots and lots of examples of this, as I've said, with the American crayfish. So where I live, near to, sort of on the Wiltshire-Gloucestershire border, we've got lots of waterways, and they are full of American crayfish, which look like massive lobsters, but they eat our crayfish. And we have bluebells as well. There's invasive species of bluebells against our native ones. There's this funny, I think it's called a bullfrog. But there's loads and loads. See, Natasha, I've not been to Brownsea Island, but I've been to the Isle of Wight and I've never been able to see them. Jack sees them. Jack, how often do you see them, Jack? Because there are lots of them on Anglesey, because they've eradicated the grey squirrels. Yeah, so there's not many. I've never seen a red squirrel. But go and have a look go and research if you're interested, all of the different invasive species that we have, because that's another way that our environment has been impacted. So how can we help our habitats? Well, this is kind of, if you've got a miserable day like I have here, you can go and think about making a little bug hotel for some bugs, to make your own perfect habitat. So your mission, when I say goodbye in a little bit, is to make a perfect habitat for a bug. Now, I've got one that I've made earlier I've got part of mine. So I've used an old can and then I've got inside, I've got an inside of a tube from that I've cut from some kitchen roll. I've got some twigs, so some dried twigs. I've got little bits of sort of ripped up paper. And then down here, I've got in my tube, I've got some old leaves, and I don't think you can see it, but I've got lots of little bits of moss, because I've got loads of moss falling off my roof and ending up on my patio. So I've made this. Now you can then get some string and then hang it in a tree, or if you want to make a really big one, you can glue them together. You can use plant pots as well if you want, or if you've got a box of some description. But this needs to be something that is going to be good from the rain. So if you've got, sometimes grown-ups have washing up tablets in like plastic boxes. So if you have those sort of things, that would be a good thing. But this bit needs to be kind of waterproof, which is why I've used an old tin. This is all from my recycling and garden. And I'm going to go and hang this up with some string. And I'm going to hang it on my fence. And then I'm going to hope that it is a perfect habitat for my bug. So I'm going to make a perfect habitat. So that's something that you can do today if you've got a miserable day like I have. It's all recycling and it's a perfect habitat for a bug. So that's what you can do if you feel like. We're going to end with a quiz. It's a multiple choice quiz. So I say that it's not a multiple choice quiz. The first question is multiple choice, but there's lots and lots of different ones. So the first question is, which is the following is an example of a perfect habitat for a polar bear? So do you think it's A, a tropical rainforest, B, a desert, C, the Arctic, or D, a grassland? So you can write your answers down. So we're going to go through them at the end. Question number 2, fill in the blanks. Animals that are something can have a devastating impact on habitats. So animals that are something can have a devastating impact on habitats. So what do we think the second one is? How can we help the red squirrels? It's a really good question. I kind of get the impression that you can't. It's almost too late. But I'm sure there is possibly something you could research about it. Right, the next one. Which of the following human activities is most likely to harm an animal's habitat? Is it planting trees? Is it recycling? Is it pollution and littering? Or is it cleaning up beaches? Number 4. What type of habitats do frogs typically live in? So do they live in forests, oceans, wetlands, or deserts? Oh, I quite like this little frog. I think it's quite cute. And the last one. What animals might you find in an urban environment? So an urban environment is like a town environment. So foxes, bears, pigeons, squirrels. So if you live sort of in a town, which might you find in an urban environment? So foxes, bears, pigeons, and squirrels. All right, we're going to go through the answers. So the first one is the polar bear's perfect environment is the Arctic. It's invasive species that affect habitats for a lot of native species. Pollution and littering is one of the big concerns about how humans are affecting habitats for other animals. Frogs live in wetlands, and I'm going to finish with this one. You would actually find all of these in an urban environment. So you might see foxes, you definitely might see pigeons. We have pigeons where we are. In fact, what we call affectionately as Mr. Pigeon, who seems to live in the hedge behind our house, has arrived this morning on our fence and has brought out its baby. So we've definitely got pigeons. And we've definitely got squirrels. We have sometimes see grey squirrels, but you see lots of grey squirrels in our local town park. Now, the interesting one is bears. Now, you won't see bears if you are watching from the UK, but I have a friend who is from Canada, and when he was at school, when he was a child, they used to have fire drills. So if any of you have ever been to school and they sort of do a fire drill of what would you do if a fire happened, they also do a bear drill. So what would happen if a bear walked into their playground? Because every sort of spring, bears arrive in their towns and villages looking for food because humans have invaded their original habitat. And he says on his street, they have these trees. I can't remember what berries they have in this particular tree is, and they climb the trees and eat the berries. And so, although we don't have bears in the UK, if you're in Canada, in the northern part of Canada, bears rocking up in an urban environment actually happens quite regularly. There, again, depending on what your grown-up says, go and research it online, because there are lots of videos showing these bears. Now, interestingly, if they don't have young, so if they don't have babies and they don't feel threatened, although it sounds really scary, actually if you just leave them alone and keep a wide berth, my friend says they're actually, they're not as scary as you would think. But yes, if you lived somewhere outside of the UK, like Canada, bears you would potentially see in an urban environment, which is another example of humans encroaching onto the habitats of others. So a good one to think about is how we can support making perfect habitats for all living organisms. Maybe look in your local area where there's any litter picks or beach cleanups or anything that you can do to support the local habitat. We always try and keep an area of our lawn which isn't mown. So A, it means I don't have to mow it as much, and B, it means that it's a bit better for the wildlife. And as I said, do go and make your lovely bug habitats, the perfect habitat for a bug. Do go and share them on our Facebook page. Thank you ever so much for joining me, and I will see you next week for our last session before the summer, all about living things and their habitats. So have a good week, and I'll see you soon.